If you love heavy war games, our resident wargamer NATO is sharing his top 5. But if you're more like me and you prefer the lighter introductory war games, pay attention to my top 5 picks here on Legendary Tactics. Okay, so war games, top 10. I don't suppose you're going to let me choose Churchill?
No, I was actually thinking about that one for myself because I consider, because if you're looking at heavy and light, Churchill's on the heavier side.
But it's not really a war game. It's a geopolitical game.
It's more of a political game. Yeah. So we'll leave that one in.
Will you let me choose Battle Line?
No. Battle Line is
great game though.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of fun. Well, then I ban you from choosing Twilight Struggle because I don't think that's a war game.
All right, fair enough.
So so why don't we begin the list? Okay, so we better define what a war game is. So let's lay the rules of engagement down. What is a war game?
War games depict military action. They can be hypothetical, historical, or even fantasy based, and they're usually set on 3 levels: tactical, like individual skirmish games like ASL; operational, like broader conflicts like Memoir 44, where you're kind of like a general; or strategic, like on a grander scale like Axis and Allies or Paths of Glory.
Right, and you really like Paths of Glory too.
Yeah, well, I still haven't played it more fully as I would have liked.
Okay, so you're using a more traditional definition of war game than I am because I'm much lighter. So let's begin with my number 1 today. So it's my number 10 actually. Blitzkrieg. This is the one that caught my attention because it's a war game for non-wargamers. So Paolo Mori's Blitzkrieg, it can be played in 20 minutes. It's a strategic game that doesn't feature fighting battles, but instead it's about allocating your military resources in a tug-of-war style battle. Yeah. I've got a playthrough up if you want to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, cool game.
So I'm going to try with my, I guess, number 9, I guess. So I base this, at least in part, by heavier, because you said you're going to do the lighter games, so I went through my collection, picked kind of my favorite heavier games.
Nice.
And I'm going to start with Panzer Army Afrika.
Wow, that's an old looking box. It's an old game. Look at all the dust on it.
I know.
That's awesome. Need to play that one a bit more.
I need to play it a bit more. But if you can imagine a game where you get not 40 movement factors, not 50, but up to 60 movement factors to move your pieces around the board. That's what this does. So it attempts to capture the sweep and the scope of the conflict in North Africa, and it's a really, really good game. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool.
But it is on the kind of the heavier side, especially with the decision-making space.
Wow, I'm surprised I've never seen it in your collection before. So
I've had it. Cool. Well, as you can tell, I've had it a long time.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, let's go to our number 8. So I'm choosing Flashpoint South China Sea. Now, given that I didn't let you use Twilight Struggle as one of your games, this is a bit of a stretch, but this is a geopolitical war game. Has a tug-of-war feel, and you're starting to notice probably I like that in my games. But Flashpoint South China Sea, GMT lunchbox game. It's a perfect entry level to this genre, I think. It's a card-driven head-to-head game where players are trying to influence territorial claims. Actually, fairly similar in some ways to this, but I think it's still its own game.
Yeah.
So
fun. There's conflict there, but it's less overt that way.
Fun little game, very introductory to the system that you might experience in a heavier one.
Absolutely.
So, awesome.
Next up, and I've talked about this game before, Fire in the Lake. Now, there are a couple of the C.O.I.N series. This is with GMT Games, C.O.I.N being standing for counter insurgency. Fire in the Lake is one of the ones that are really more of a war game. It plays out, especially with the expansion. There's actually literally a very almost traditional style war game that's built in to that expansion. But it feels like a war game. You're moving soldiers around. You're attacking. You're on that grand strategic level. It does add the socio-political stuff on top, but I think much more than a lot of the other games. This is a war game, and it's one of the heavier ones of the series as well.
Wow,
so,
if you had to go to a number 2 C.O.I.N game, what's the second one? Is it Andean Abyss, or is Labyrinth a C.O.I.N game?
For a war game, it would be Falling Sky.
Falling Sky?
Because again, it's more of a straight-ahead war game. You've got the Romans versus the Gauls and the different factions there, and it plays much more like a war game. So it would be my number 2 of the war game type C.O.I.N games, I guess, if that makes sense.
Excellent.
The other ones are more based in sort of guerrilla warfare and that, and a little more covert action as opposed to outright conflict.
Fantastic. Well, you're echoing a preview of one of my games that's coming on my list. So, okay, next up for me, we're still looking at light games here. We've got Undaunted Battle of Britain. I know it's 2 games, Undaunted Battle of Britain and Normandy. And I know this isn't one of your favorites, this one in particular, but we've had a chat and we've had a debate. If you want to check that video out, you can click on the link. But this has tactical plays with missions and deck building, and I really like, I think the Battle of Britain really simulates the air field of combat well. This is more the land. You command pilots in dogfights to gain control of the skies, or you're scouting territories. What I like about both of these games is that there's a campaign to work through. I think playing with a friend and working through all of those different missions, it changes the game, so you're not always starting with that same setup every single time. If I have to choose between these, I think you probably choose this one.
I would choose that one.
I think I'd probably choose this one.
All right, let's switch.
So we'll do this. Another nice little light game. If you're thinking of trying to get someone into wargaming, I think this would be a good way to do it, especially people who like deck building games, because this is you step in with deck building, but then you get a flavor for how each of those cards in your deck becomes a unit on the field that you're commanding. And it's how do you string together your commands in such a way to maximize your efforts. So really cool little game.
Good. All right, my what are we up to? My number 3. I don't know what number we're at, what that is, but D-Day at Omaha Beach. This game is it's a solitaire game. It's very, very hard to win. There's when you're landing your troops and tanks on Omaha Beach during D-Day, you're trying to get off the beach, get behind the beach to the territory beyond, and to establish a beachhead. As I said, it's quite hard to win. It's famously hard to win. A lot of your soldiers die, and it's actually, it is a kind of a heavier game in some ways, but once you're into it, it's actually pretty streamlined. Like, it works really well. But there's lots of decision points. It's very thinky. You really need to plan things out as best you can and deal with a lot of adversity. But great game,
traditional
lots of fun.
Hex Encounter. This is from Decision Games 2013, so not super old, but not brand new either. So
exactly.
Good to see that coming out. Okay. Well, my next game, I don't have a physical copy of it in the studio, but the game is Root. And this is based on the counterinsurgency system, or C.O.I.N. And there's a lot of different reasons I love this. Now, initially, some viewers out there might say, wait a minute, that's not a war game. But I want to make my argument here. So if you think about the Woodland Alliance, they're very insurrectional. The Marquise de Cat, they're much more like Euro-style engine building. The Vagabond, they're like a role-playing faction. The Lizard Cult, they're a mobile group of warriors, and they actually benefit from dying. The Underground Duchy, they build infrastructure. They have tons of warriors, and you're starting to see the common denominator here, I think. The IRI are action programmers. The Corvids, they're more like bluffing. You spread them thin, and they place traps on the board. And so what all of these factions share in common is that they can attack each other on the turns in various ways. It's raw, gritty, unit-to-unit combat, and every faction emphasizes a different element of war games, I think. So I think we shouldn't be fooled by the skin of the game, even though it looks like fuzzy, furry critters. Ultimately, you need to fight at some point, and you need to eliminate the other people's units from the board or cause damage, which takes away cards, which takes away crafting. But it's a head-to-head, it's a skirmish, it's down and dirty. I think it's a brilliant war game, even though it doesn't look like a war game.
It's interesting you classify it as a lighter game, though, because it's famously hard to teach.
You might have me there. So I'll say light thematically, and because it's asymmetrical. What's interesting?
Nice save.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I'll argue is that I know a lot of people who are lighter gamers who love and have gotten into this game, but they would never take on D-Day or one of these other games simply because of the appearance. So we'll say it's a heavy game masquerading as a light game.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Excellent. Right. So we're on to your number.
The No Retreat series. 3. I'm still waiting on game number 5, but I have 1 to 4. This is actually, it's kind of funny because this is, I believe, volume 3, but it came out before, or no, this is volume 4, but it came out before volume 3, I believe. So this is about the Italian front from 1943 to 45. This one is the heaviest of the No Retreat series by far. It's got a lot of rules. There's a lot of counters. There's a lot to this to this game. It's really, really neat though, and it does cover a kind of a conflict that is otherwise kind of ignored, but very traditional. Again, hex and counter, and I think the counters are really nice. The production of it is great, but it is a little bit more on the heavier side. It's going to take a little bit of time to learn and to play well. So.
Okay, anyway. I'm seeing a bit of influence of some solitaire feel in here. You can play this one solitaire, D-Day Beaches solitaire?
No, this one would be two-player.
Okay.
You could try solitaire, but one of the neat things about this is that if you know anything about the conflict in Italy, it was very static front where everyone was dug in and they were trying to break through and so forth. So it becomes a puzzle where, the Germans and Italians have built kind of these defenses, and the Allies have to try and find their way through it, and that's kind of the interesting part of it. It's very puzzly and very you've got that obstacle to overcome,
right?
And so it's a really interesting from that angle, right?
Nice.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So we've arrived to my top choice now. I feel like every game I'm trying to justify that it's a war game. I feel like I'm bending the talk, but I think it's fair. So most of the best war games are designed for 2 players, and my favorite war game is Star Wars Rebellion. So this is head-to-head conflict between the Galactic Empire and the Rebel Alliance, and you're commanding starships, fighters, ground units, troops, and individual heroes. It's a full-on strategic operation that feels really cinematic to me. And there's certainly a lot of theme here, but the area control mechanism forces you to build up your forces, and you're battling for supremacy. So layered into this, we also have the hidden rebel base in there, which forces the narrative of the game forward. It forces that conflict. It's everything that I could ask for in a war game. Frankly, you just get those units down. It's like, who am I going to build? Where am I going to put them? And I would say war games, I'm generally thinking of those as ones that are less based on the industrial production of units, although there are a lot of games like that. But this one I think is a nice balance between producing and engaging with the units on the board. And they're fun the miniatures are beautiful. I mean, again, it's one, anyone who loves Star Wars could get into this game. So I think one of the common features of all of my games is that they're very accessible for people who are dipping their toes into wargaming.
Yeah. Now I will say, like, at the grand strategic level, you do want to think about production and building.
Yes.
How are you going to create your army in a way that's going to be effective. So that's very typical of a grand strategic level of game.
Epic.
So epic. Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Right. So now the moment everyone's been waiting for, the heavy number one.
The heavy number one. Let me get a little bit of dust on here. Squad leader. Obviously a classic. I never got into the advanced squad leader system. This was about as far as I would want to go. I may get at some point I may pick up the sequel to this, which is Cross of Iron, because that's apparently excellent, especially with the armor rules. But this is an incredibly fun game, but it is heavy. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of things to figure out. Now, it does teach you in a progressive system. So you start with some rules, and then you play a scenario, and then you learn a few more rules, then you play another scenario. But what's really neat, I still remember the time I learned the first scenario, played that, learned the second scenario, played that, and then the third scenario is essentially the first and the second scenario put together in one go.
Very cool.
And it just changed. I still remember that when I got that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it just, I don't know, just the way it came together was just really, really nice. But
very tactical game, though.
Yeah, very tactical. And things like soldiers' morale comes into play a lot, and the psychological aspects. So you may have units, but they just don't want to fight.
Right.
So there's that aspect to warfare, which wasn't well represented up to this point. And even though it's an old game, I mean, it's a classic. I'm sure there's lots of people who agree, but it's also one of the heaviest games in my collection.
Okay.
That way.
Well, thank you. If you appreciate us assembling these lists and sharing our thoughts with you, please like, subscribe, add your thoughts. We'd love to hear if you have light games that you love, if you have heavy games that you'd love, please share them with us. And in the meantime,
get out there,
get gaming,
and be legendary.